Although, Trickway 89, I need some chocolate after that last episode. I just wanted to mention that they actually started advertising season 4 of Discovery on Paramount Plus on TV. I was watching The Big Bang Theory and they actually had ads throughout the episode on it, so I just thought that was worth mentioning. Hello, Steve White's 89. Well, I just watched the second episode of season 4 of Discovery, Anomaly, and it was good. I have to first mention the actor David Ajala. He did a really good job in this episode, and so did Snicker Martin Green, because she hasn't given the best performances as Michael, but the theory has always been split between, is it her acting ability or is it the script and direction? And I'm thinking script and direction, because this was quite a shift, and I think that's because she has changed the character, and that's because she can actually act. So the scenes with Book were very emotional, very well done. Frankly, I cried like a bitch. Gave myself a bit of a headache, actually. So I'm going to give them that. Because, I don't know, I'm still dealing with grief from my parents and my sister and a friend all dying in 2 years of each other. I didn't deal with it before the pandemic, and everything's just gotten worse since the pandemic. And I know Sonika Martin Green has had loss as well in her life in the last couple of years. She lost both her parents. She had postpartum with her child, and I think that has, helped her range as an actor as well. So, and I do sort of feel more. I don't know. I just it worked emotionally this episode. So, and that's probably the first experience I've had with the show working emotionally. I've never really felt I could connect with it. So yes. The story is not that complicated, because like most of the Discovery stories, which I don't like the format, the long-form storytelling, you just get a part of a story, not an actual story. So instead of, going out and having an adventure each week, basically we just have this one long annual universe-ending disaster which they have to solve, and you just get a piece of that each week and then it ends, and that's not really fulfilling for me as a Star Trek fan. But all that being said, this episode was fairly simple. Basically, Book has just lost his family and his whole planet, and he's dealing with shock and grief and guilt, because he saw these birds flocking, and animals, they know when things are coming, and he said he felt he should have felt it, he should have done something. He didn't. And there's some quite haunting imagery when they move into an asteroid field, which is must be parts of his planet, I guess. He actually sees the dead birds floating amongst the asteroids, which is his hallucination. But it was quite jarring, because they showed him having hallucinations of the birds and seeing the birds, and sort of feeling that being like a symbol of his guilt. And he was seeing hallucinations of his nephew, which of course he felt he should have taken with him. And so he has a very big sort of emotional sort of journey on this little journey within the story. Now, the story itself, like I said, is fairly simple. Basically, they are trying to get data on this giant anomaly. They start off at Starfleet talking about it. It's 5 light years wide. They don't know what it is. It's like a roaming binary black hole, or a pair of them. And it's basically, there's a giant excretion cloud mass with a gravity well inside, which would suggest there's black holes within it or something. It was confusing, and that was the point. They were saying it's bizarre, we don't know what it is. And there's a pissy little moment between Stamets and Burnham where he basically is just like, I don't know what this is, and she's like, can we have like scientific definitions, please? So they decide, of course, they come up with the idea that the best idea is to send Booker in and to tether him to the ship. So, because there's a bunch of science issues why they can't actually just send a probe in or go in themselves. So the ship is small enough but big enough, blah, blah, blah. So they send him in, they tether him so they can pull him back out, and also to maintain a connection between the hollow Stamets they've sent in to basically retrieve the data and get the data about the anomaly from the inside, which of course Booker doesn't know how to do because he's flying the ship. At first, Michael didn't want him to go in because she didn't think he was ready for it, and he's basically like, I'm not Starfleet, I'm going to do it, you can't do anything. Which brings into question a whole bunch of issues about why he's actually involved in Starfleet missions and so forth, and that's a whole other thing. But she has to let him go, and Stamets is sort of there to babysit him on some level, but also, of course, to do the science. So they go in, and there's a moment, actually, I felt there was a cue in the music that sort of gave a nod to Star Trek the Motion Picture, because it has an air of that. There's a lot of shots of people looking at the view screen and just staring in awe because they don't know what this thing is. It's just giant. And once they get near it, there's some gravity issue where pulses are being sent out and they knock the gravity out on the ship. And we see the crew basically become weightless, and then the gravity comes back on and they are dropped back onto the floor, which is pretty brutal, actually. And it's weird. As much as I haven't liked this show and have been a huge critic of it, I do like the characters and some of the actors. Like when I saw Mary Wiseman with like the chin makeup where she'd been injured, I felt like, oh my god, Tilly's hurt. I'm like, oh god, I actually like these characters. And maybe because it's all the fat shaming she had to deal with the other year, and the fact that I did a couple of videos about that because I thought it was disgusting, and I got barred from a bunch of Star Trek fan clubs and groups on Facebook because I was actually defending her and actually telling those people that they were, being toxic, and that they were basically undermining any real criticism they have of the show by acting like this. So I just got kicked out of all these groups, which says a lot about them. But it was just weird. I found myself, like I said, I emotionally connected with this episode. It worked on that level. So they go in. It's pretty harsh. There's a point where they realise that they can't stay tethered to book and to get the data because he has to stay in there longer. So they decide to disconnect, which is not an easy decision. And he thinks it's going to take a week or so before he can repair the ship and come out himself. They realise they have to do something, and one of the other guys, I've forgotten his name, I should have wrote it down. One of the black guys on the bridge. Who people have noted looks a lot slimmer this season. Some people are suggesting he might have some health issues or something. I'm like, I can kind of see he looks different, but he doesn't look that bad. He doesn't look gaunt or anything, really. He's like, well, I used to do like sailing or something, some sort of 23rd century sort of, I can't remember what it was, but it basically says, why don't we ride the wave? We should be able to align the ship to these waves, and he should be able to ride the wave out. So that was the plan. That came through him sort of sharing this hobby that he had, which is good because Star Trek is always a family of people, and it's always about the people's knowledge and differences, being their strengths, and the idea of it's a group, it's an ensemble, and everyone brings something which contributes, which always helps to solve problems. So that was nice. It was a nice little touch, very Star Trek. The first time Book tries it, he fails, and this taps into his feelings of guilt and failure that he didn't help his family. And he's again seeing hallucinations of his nephew running around the ship in the background and that. And it's quite well done visually and quite haunting. Like I said, I was crying like a bitch at this point, I think. I can't remember exactly when. He starts talking to Stamets, and it does help because Stamets is very intimidated by him because they've never really talked. He seemed to resent him for saving everyone and doing the spore jump. I can't remember what happened last season. I vaguely remember what happened, but Book felt he resented him for it, and they have a moment. They sort of realise, I don't know, he's grateful for him helping him and so forth, and they go through their emotional stuff, and I'm not going to try and go over it all, partly because I didn't note it well enough, and I was actually paying attention to it. But he tries again. Michael stops trying to command him as a captain and just tries to talk to him as a partner, which Saru suggests, because Saru is back on the ship. Did I mention that? He showed up at the start of the episode and asked to come back on the ship basically as some sort of consultant or second in command, or I'm not sure they actually said his rank or his actual position. But everyone's happy to have him back, and he's doing a good job of advising everyone. And he does manage to ride the wave out this time, and he's safe. And then we get to the unfortunate realization that Tilly delivers, that the anomaly has changed, so the data means nothing. They were trying to get this data so they could predict where it's going to show up, because it's just showing up randomly and destroying places within its proximity. And they realise we can't predict this. We have no idea what it's going to do. So, and the last shot is them pulling out of them, sitting in front of this giant cloud that kind of looks like the sort of eye shape in the centre of Vidra at one point, which kind of reminded me of. And yeah, there's a few character moments here and there. Adira, who I want to call Adora, but I'm not going to. Adira and Gray are looking at a synth body, and they did mention Picard that they stopped doing synth transfers because there was a high failure rate. So I'm guessing Picard lived, but it didn't become the norm or anything. And I'm not sure where they're going with that. I don't understand how they're going to bring this character back to life. I'm not sure what her existence is, like what she is. Is she a ghost? Is she... I can't remember if they explained it well, and I'm not remembering, or if they didn't really explain it properly. But I don't really understand. But they're apparently going to put her consciousness into that body, and she'll be, a normal character. And I probably should be referring to them as they. I keep forgetting. I can't remember the character's pronouns versus the actor's pronouns, because there's like 4 of them if you look at the characters and the actors. So sorry about that. I think I did that wrong. But I always find their scenes jarring, because I find Blue Del Toro is not a very good actor, whereas Ian is. And I find when they're both in a scene together, it just highlights that Ian is kind of better. Although this episode was a bit weak. They were often just sort of talking in very contemporary language, and they just sounded like just kids talking, which I guess was part of the way they were playing it, because you're sort of getting a new body. It's like Christmas, so maybe that's what they were going for. But they felt a bit off. But my nose is running a bit from crying earlier. What else happened? Tilly had a few moments because she was feeling the pressure of command, and she snapped at Adira a couple of times, and the doctor gave her some advice. Now, I do find it funny looking at him now, because he plays the character kind of gently, as she points out that he has a soft touch, but the actor himself is a bit nasty, so I find it hard looking at him and not sort of seeing the actor sort of instead of the character, which is kind of funny, which is why actors, I think, should kind of stay off social media a lot, because it sort of undermines the character. You see, if you see a lot of the person, it kind of stops sort of how you see the character. Whatever, I'm just waffling. But so I mean, the episode was okay. The only part that actually bothered me, and there's always something. I haven't been able to watch an episode of Discovery where something doesn't bother me, but this is a small one. At some point, Tilly says a situation was shitty, and I'm like, oh, so they're still going with the swearing. Which is something that just culturally wasn't something that there was in the century they came from. They just added it in to be edgy for the show, and it really doesn't fit. And they did the same thing last episode, so it looks like they're keeping that. Just, they just like to trigger us, I think, and bother us by doing little things like that. But overall, the acting was good. The story was okay. Like I said, it's a part of an overall story, so you can't expect that much from it, but that's part of the disappointment of it as a whole, that with the older stories, with the standalone stories, you've got a whole story. With these ones, each episode you just get a little part. And sometimes that part can be good because they can explore one element of something really well, but other times it just feels incomplete because you don't really get anywhere. And you have to know what happened before, and, it's like there's parts from last season I don't remember clearly because I watched them once and then put them out of my mind, and they're pulling on those now, and I'm not exactly sure. Like the situation between Stamets and Book, I couldn't really remember. I didn't really understand why they had such issues. But yeah, he did a good job. He's probably the best actor. But they're all pretty good except for Blue. I don't know. I just can't believe them as the character. they just seem to just be talking, saying the lines. I don't really feel that they're like really being that character. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of shocked that I don't hate this episode. I kind of have had the realization that I don't actually hate Discovery anymore. Partly because I think the stress and trauma of the everything's happened in my life in the last 4 or 5 years and the last couple of years of the pandemic. There's just bigger things to care about. I just don't have the energy to hate this show. I still have issues with it, story wise, theme wise, the format, just so many elements that don't work for Star Trek and make this show really not a Star Trek show that I'll criticise until the end of time or they change it. But hating it, I don't have to do that. And a lot of the people who are hating on the show, they really just look petty and stupid. And I don't want to be one of those people. I've had my moments being one of those people. I don't want to be that person, but it doesn't mean I'm still not going to criticise the show and have issues with the show, because there are issues with the show, legitimate issues with the show, which fans should be able to criticise without being attacked for other personal reasons, like, you know, the whole Istanphobe stuff. So I'm going to continue criticising the show. I'm going to continue watching it. I'm going to give it a chance because it does seem to be getting better, but I still don't like the overall format and just, you know, what the show is. But the actual episodes and the direction and the acting is all getting better. But I'm going to go. I can't believe I talked this long. I was going to try and keep it to 15 minutes. I just hit 16. Failed. But yeah, I'm going to go. I kind of did enjoy it as an episode of Star Trek, like going into something unknown, exploring it, blah, blah, blah. If they can sort of have their separate episodes within the overall and make each chapter its own sort of story, then it doesn't matter so much if you do, you know, this sort of long-form storytelling. It's when they just, it feels like they're getting out of creating an actual story by just sort of focusing on just little elements. This did feel like a story to a certain extent. Like last week they had rescuing this person, and this episode they're going in to get this data. And if they can do that, the overall story feels more like an overarching story, not, you know, the novel chapter approach. So I'm still talking. It's 17 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to go. I think I needed a little bit of YouTube therapy because I found, like I said, I connected with the character, I connected with the show, and it was very emotionally affecting and draining. And I'm sort of cleansing that with my little review. But I'm going to go because I'm tired. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe if I didn't already say that already. Thanks. Bye.